India and US teams have started their trade talks. Delegations led by Brendan Lynch holding talks with the chief negotiator here in India. That's in fact our first story. We have a lot more coming up. Let's get you what else is on the radar today. And it's Trump on Monday that has said that he's suing American daily, the New York Times, over his coverage of him over the last of many decades, calling it the most degenerate newspaper. Israel heavily bombarded Gaza City. Well, it is Donald Trump now suing the newspaper New York Times, and this is for $15 billion US. And Israel heavily bombarded Gaza City after US Secretary of State Marco Rubio backed Israelis' goal of eradicating Hamas and warned that only days may be left for a diplomatic solution. And Google sets out $6.8 billion US. This is going to be in investment in the United Kingdom ahead of Trump's state visit that's going to be taking place later today in artificial intelligence. And in a big setback as far as the Pakistan Cricket Board is concerned, the International Cricket Council has rejected its request to remove the match referee over his actions in the no handshake controversy. A very good afternoon. You're watching, this is NDTV's India Global. I'm Divya. Let's get your top story. And this is after almost 2 months of Trump's tariff tirades with unending and baseless attacks levied against New Delhi by Washington. Now, trade talks are, in fact, they have resumed between the two countries, as that is what took place today. This is a meeting that's underway. This is with Chief Negotiator from the United States, Brendan Lynch, who's here holding those closed-door meetings, and this is a meeting that's taking place in the national capital with the chief Indian negotiator Rajesh Agrawal. The broader focus of the trade talks will be centered on new steps required to enhance bilateral trade across the goods and services sector, increasing market access, reducing tariffs and non-tariff barriers, and deepening supply chain integration as well. Officials say that the talks, this is the first since Trump's tariffs that kicked in. Do remember, 50% tariffs is what India is looking at for exporting goods to the United States. Now, this is after calling him a good friend. Donald Trump, referring to Prime Minister Modi, has now come back to that negotiating table, and that has started today in the national capital. So this really comes about after Donald Trump said that he was optimistic about concluding a trade agreement with India. And in response, Prime Minister Modi said that trade negotiations would pave the way for unlocking the limitless potential that the two countries have, and this friendship and this partnership can bring about. And it's not just Donald Trump who made that announcement with Prime Minister Modi there as well, but it was Piyush Goyal who in fact said that on the NDTV conclave, that he was very hopeful that things would be happening. In fact, he's gone on to say now that it could happen within 2 months' time, between now and November, when we could have that trade deal that could be signed upon. And of course, we have seen 5 rounds of talks that have taken place so far. The 6th round was supposed to take place at the end of August, but all that was put on hold. Why? Because the tariffs came into effect. This was the additional 25% tariffs that have been slapped by Donald Trump. Why? For buying Russian oil. That is the charge against India, and that was the condition in order to remove those additional reciprocatory tariffs. And of course, it is Peter Navarro who has been hitting out at India for, providing, the United States goods, but also talking about the kind of tariffs that India poses against countries like the United States. And these are reciprocatory tariffs that have come into effect. And this is the additional 25%, taking that whole toll to the exporters who have been facing that 50% tariff, which basically means that most of those orders haven't been renewed. But of course, the government, they're saying that they were looking for alternatives because it was Prime Minister Modi who was looking out for the farmers, saying that he would continue to back the farmers, and that was a non-negotiable. But the negotiations are back on. They're back on the table with this closed-door meeting that's taking place here in the national capital. It's a one-day meeting that is taking place between the Chief Negotiating Officer and from the US side and from the Indian side. So we have both of those who are holding that trade negotiation, these talks that were meant to in fact take place last month, but that delay that we have been seeing only because the tariffs came into effect. So it is back on the negotiating table and this crucial meeting that's taking place. We're talking about Rajesh Agrawal holding that meeting with, we are seeing that very crucial meeting that is taking place at the moment. And this is in regard to the future when it comes to the trade, the trade tariffs. That is something that is being discussed as far as US Trade Representative for South and Central Asia, Brendan Lynch, who's here in India, having that talk, this bilateral trade agreement with his Indian counterpart, that is Rajesh Agrawal. So India so far, of course, has held 5 rounds of negotiations in the United States, and this was supposed to take place on the 25th and the 29th, but was postponed. Now, this is a very important meeting coming out, and all eyes on the outcome of this meeting to know that there would be another round of, there would be a couple of rounds before that dotted line can be signed, but all hopes are high, particularly the hopes of the exporters here in India. So when we talk about the US Chief Negotiator, he is an expert when it comes to agriculture and manufacturing. So that is something, is totally being discussed. And of course, we're talking about Rajesh Agrawal. Rajesh Agrawal is the Special Secretary in the Department of Commerce. Here, the non-negotiables as far as India is concerned, do remember that what was really said and what was a break or make as far as the deal is concerned is the backing of the farmers. And that is the stand that the Prime Minister took. And he said that, in order to gain some, you need to lose some, and that he would not negotiate if it came to the farmers of India, and that he would always have their back. But also, they were also talking about finding an alternative to the exporters who put out a lot of stuff. They export a lot of stuff as far as the US is concerned, and to find an alternative to them. Of course, this tariff war has been beneficial to other countries, particularly Vietnam and other Southeast Asian countries. But, as far as India is concerned, this very crucial meeting that is taking place here in the national capital. We do know that there would be multiple other rounds that could perhaps be taking place, but that dotted line perhaps could be signed, if all goes well, by November, if not earlier, is what Piyush Goyal had to say. Right, so this is a very crucial meeting, like, a lot riding on this in regard to India and, its exporters, which now what we really do know as far as the chief negotiators are concerned, they are holding that very closed door meeting. These are talks that are centered on enhancing bilateral trade. Sources are saying that talks are expected to pave the way as far as the round of talks. This is a deadline for the first, this is the first such a meeting of the pact that is going to be taking place perhaps in November. The aim is to double bilateral trade. That is the deal. So this is really going to be, setting the pace when it comes to the road ahead. And this might just take a few more months before all things are finally settled. But both the parties have come on the table. Donald Trump calling Prime Minister Modi his good friend, saying that he was ready to, negotiate, saying that, he's a great leader. There's that bonhomie that's back between the two leaders. Vishal joining us in order to get us the latest. Vishal, of course, too early to tell as to what's really happening between the two, sides meeting over that table in order to pave the way for what could be coming about in a few months' time from now. The outcome of this meeting is something that we're all waiting for. Vishal.
Yeah, that's exactly. We're all waiting for the outcome, and this is the first sign that there's some kind of thaw between both the sides, and we've been waiting for this moment. And the meeting is underway. We are waiting for the results of the meeting. It's closed meeting. What happens in the meeting is still under wraps. We'll have to wait for the meeting to get over. As we've been discussing throughout, there are several things that need to be ironed out before we have some sort of an agreement, because there are many things that need to be addressed as far as both the sides are concerned. The first one is India has drawn a big red line when it comes to dairy and agriculture sectors, because around 50% of the India's working population is dependent on the agriculture sector. So that's one thing India is not willing to relent on. And the other one is the dairy sector, which also has similar implications. And on the other hand, the US side is concerned because it wants access of the huge Indian agriculture market, and also it wants to export US corn because it is the biggest exporter of corn and also the cheapest exporter of corn. So it wants India to have that share of corn that US produces, but India already has its fair share of corn production, and India's policy dictates that it cannot have genetically modified corns in India's territory. So these things will have to be ironed out. We'll have to wait for the next round of talks. These are officially the initial level of talks before we have the sixth round of talks, and then probably there will be the first tranche of agreement that will be signed in the fall of this year, which will be around towards the end of November. We'll have to wait for all of that, but these are some good signs. Definitely, there will be some positive results coming out of this meeting.
Right, Vishal, stay with us for the next story as well. And this is basically in regard to, let's get you the very latest that's coming about now. And this is with Donald Trump there suing the New York Times. Why? Because of the coverage of Donald Trump over the last few decades. The American leader said that he's bringing in a $15 billion defamation lawsuit against the publication that he labeled as a virtual mouthpiece for the radical left Democrat Party. In order to know more on this, Vishal back with us. Vishal, a lot has to do with the Epstein file reports.
Yeah, so has been the assumption, because he is not directly named that the Epstein files are to be blamed for this big $15 billion defamation lawsuit. But he has indicated that the New York Times has time and again tried to defame Trump in many ways. He has, indicated that in the run-up to the 2024 presidential elections, a lot of articles were published by the New York Times, and also a few books published by the New York Times that sort of try to malign Donald Trump's image, and that is what he's fighting against, this huge $15 billion case against the huge publication in the US. We'll have to say, wait what New York Times said, because so far New York Times has not responded on this huge story. So it will have to be seen how they respond to this great lawsuit from the Trump side. To say that this is solely based on the Epstein files will be sort of a primitive. He's not, as I mentioned, clearly mentioned those files, but it is quite safe to assume so, because in the recent past, a lot of these stories.
Right. Thank you so much, Vishal, for getting us the very latest. In other news, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has announced that Washington and Beijing have reached a framework agreement. This is basically in regard to the ownership of TikTok's American operations. Basically saying that the understanding was set. This was during trade talks in Madrid and would allow for U.S. ownership, with President Trump as well as Xi Jinping expected to finalize that deal, and that could happen as early as Friday. Trump has now taken to social media site Truth and said that negotiations had gone very well. While China has gone on to say that, they've confirmed the framework agreement, but emphasized that no deal would come about if it was coming about at the cost of the interest of the Chinese companies.
Mr. President, you had the framework that's been agreed to with TikTok, for example. Will China continue to have a stake in the company?
Well, we haven't decided that, but it looks to me, and I'm speaking to President Xi on Friday for confirmation of that, and, frankly, more importantly, a big deal. And we've had very good meetings. As you know, we were in Europe, our people, Scott Bessent and Jameson Greer, and others. And it was a very big meeting with China. And, you know, they're treating us with respect. We treat them with respect, too. But it was very successful. And on top of it, we have what could be a very good deal. Don't forget, I've had more people say, could you try and keep TikTok alive? I use TikTok. I mean, I have to admit it in the election, and look how I did with you. No Republicans come close.
We have a framework for a TikTok deal. The two leaders, President Trump and Party Chair Xi, will speak on Friday to complete the deal, but we do have a framework for a deal with TikTok.
And with that, we're taking a very quick break. Back with a whole lot more on the other side. To stay with us. Welcome back. Let's get you the latest when it comes to the conflict as far as Gaza is concerned. This is a fresh tension in the we are talking about, the situation as far as Gaza is concerned with this new offensive that has taken place. And this comes close on the heels of what Marco Rubio had gone on to say. Marco Rubio there, being in support of what was really said by Netanyahu and saying that it's aimed at rooting out Hamas. The operator is an escalation as far as the war is concerned that has been going on for almost 2 years and is expected to increase, and the death toll is also expected to go up. Ghazali joining us in order to get us the latest. Ghazali, take us to what's really happened here in this very fresh offensive that is being reported from the ground.
See, after Marco Rubio left Tel Aviv yesterday, when he was there for a 2-day visit to Israel, both Mr. Rubio and Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, clearly said that they want the ground offensive to continue in Gaza. They want demilitarization of the region as well as Hamas to lay down its arms. And to achieve those results, Israel will have to intensify its ground operation or military operations in Gaza. And this is exactly what happened yesterday overnight when Israel continued to bombard the civilian areas in Gaza City, and most of those areas or buildings which came under attack was something where the civilians have been camping after intense war which has been going on for the last 2 years. Israel continues to claim that these were the places where which are declared as Hamas hideouts, but the local civilians have been contradicting it for as many days, that Israel continues to displace them from north to south, south to central Gaza, and then to other places. But what is very evident from this attack is that Israel has got a green light from United States to continue with its military operations and also ensure that Hamas is eliminated in the region. But for the last 2.5 years now, since this war has broken out, or the attack in Gaza has broken out, it is widely believed, both in US administration as well as in Israeli military establishment, that Israel has not been able to achieve most of its war goals, be it dismantling Hamas completely or even getting all the hostages back with through the military operations.
Thank you so much, Ghazali, for getting us the very latest from Gaza. Moving on now in a fresh round of tensions taking place in the Indo-Pacific. It's the Chinese and the Filipino Coast Guard that clashed as far as the South China Sea is concerned. As the Chinese Coast Guard fired water cannons at Philippine ships. This is near the disputed shoal, accusing Manila of an illegal intrusion and the ramming of one of its vessels. The incident that took place, this comes a week after China announced plans in order to turn the shoal into a national nature reserve, raising tensions over the strategic shipping route as far as this route is concerned that has been a flashpoint over sovereignty and fishing access in a vital shipping route carrying more than 3 trillion in annual trade. My colleague Disha Bagchi joining us in order to get us the latest on this. Disha, take us to China's Coast Guard there, retorting to water cannons, and this is near the shoal, accusing Manila of that illegal intrusion and ramming of one of its vessels.
Absolutely, again, fresh tensions, a fresh flashpoint, this time in the Indo-Pacific, specifically this Scarborough Shoal, which has been a very disputed region between China and Philippines in the South China Sea for decades now. And the tensions in this region have been escalating over the past couple of months. We, in fact, just last month saw a Chinese Coast Guard ship clashing with another one of its own while they were trying to, again, shoot these water cannons cannons at Filipino vessels. But just to give our viewers some context as to why this shoal even matters and what really triggered this latest tension, this really came after last week China announced that they were in fact going to build a nature reserve on this shoal, which is a disputed territory. And Manila, of course, protested, lodged a strong protest against this move. Now China, of course, claims that it is Manila who's been intruding over this region and trying to take over it, while Manila claims its sovereignty over the shoal. But this shoal itself is in the middle of the South China Sea, a region that China has been very aggressive in, and as you mentioned, again, a very key trade route in the Indo-Pacific. So really the shoal itself is named after this British vessel which is, in the region, which is, crashed into the region a couple of decades ago, and has this region in fact becomes crucial for trade. And we have to see what really happens next between China and Philippines. The tensions had reduced, but again with this latest attack, there is scope that it could escalate again.
Thank you so much, Disha, for getting us the very latest. This is the latest standoff, the latest tension that has erupted as far as China and Philippines is concerned. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Global. Thank you so much for watching.